Hello, hello, hello. It's me again, back to do some more Gurdjieff quotes, Ouspensky quotes and such like. And I wanted to do a little show on building our bodies and reincarnation and rebirth, probably. I'll throw that in. Recurrence, I'm sure, will come up. And what it is that we're doing. As you probably know, in many of the esoteric teachings and even Christ's words, and Buddha and such like, they all say we have to die and be reborn. And Gurdjieff also says this. And I'm going to start actually with a quote from Charles Knott, our good friend Charles Knott, who says, "If a man by conscious effort or by accident has acquired the conception of a soul, he must willy-nilly become coated again and again with a planetary body until the soul becomes perfected, or it will suffer and languish eternally. This teaching is to help these unfortunates, people like us." And I think what he's saying there is your soul's developing in each life that we're living, because we keep coming back in the wheel of reincarnation. And hopefully that karma comes over if we've been into the next life, if we've been working on our souls. Well, all karma does, comes over into the next life, law of cause and effect. What you do in this life might not necessarily be rebounded upon in this life. It might carry over to the next one. But I like to think that this kind of work, this kind of teaching, carries on into the next life if we unfortunates have to come back and live on this planet in another body again. So maybe in past lives, because we've been drawn to this work, we've encountered this kind of teaching in past lives and we're learning more each time. Maybe we were lucky enough to have been alive when Gurdjieff was around and we got to meet him in a past life, or met him in another past life when he was somebody else, or maybe Ouspensky, or maybe we were in mystery schools or had other teachings, got caught up with the esoteric Christianity or esoteric Islam, or followed a Buddhist path in another life. All these teachings all come to the one truth. They're all ancient wisdoms that lead to the one truth. So by doing this over and over in different lives, learning different aspects of the work, we then carry that on into the next life, and hopefully that helps us build ourselves up for each life, as we, as Knott says here, try to perfect our soul so that we can get off the wheel. So I was going to do, just one other quote from Knott, and he got this from Ouspensky. "The various ideas of life after death, all of these taken simply and not from the point of view of their wiseacrings and distortions, have something that is right." And you might know that in this last 100 years or so, probably longer than that, the Western world's been quite anti-reincarnation. My own personal fault with Christianity not promoting reincarnation is because they wanted to think that, or explain that, only Christ comes back and reincarnates. But if you really look deeply into his esoteric teachings, the Christ's esoteric teachings, into the Gospels, and read between the lines, you can see that he is talking about reincarnation. He does talk about the next life. And we're trying to get out of this life so that we go to the heaven, to join with the divine, or reach our higher selves. Buddha talks constantly about reincarnation. The Indians and the Hindu faith is all about reincarnation. It's been talked about for millennia. And there is actually a body of work in, oh, now I've forgotten which university it is, but it's Dr. Ian Stevenson. He's since passed away and hopefully gone on to heaven, maybe reincarnated again. But anyway, Dr. Ian Stevenson did these studies about reincarnation, which are very interesting. If you look up his work, he does lots of videos. I believe Dr. Jim Tucker, or maybe it's Professor Jim, no, it's Dr. Jim Tucker, is continuing that work now, looking into the ideas of people coming back again and again, and little children remembering their past lives, but as they get older, it seems to fade from them as they become caught up in the life that they're living in now, which, maybe they should do. There's also the question of, why do we not remember our past lives properly? Well, I wonder if we would become fixated on past lives. I've been to a few past life regressions myself and found it very interesting. Definitely helped me in my development. But at the same time, I spent a lot of time trying to find out more about that past life, not relive it, but just to try and understand who I was in past lives. It was very fascinating, and maybe you can go and find out about your past lives if you believe in that kind of thing. And if all time is going on continuously and every life is happening now, and all the times are happening at the same time, if that is the true way that time operates, we should be able to see our future lives as well, if we have any. But anyway, back to Gurdjieff. So he talks about reincarnation in various books of his. And he says in All and Everything, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. That's from John, the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 3. Any prayer may be heard by the higher powers only if it is uttered thrice. First for the welfare or the peace of the souls of one's parents. And you just say the rest. And I'm trying to remember, I think then it's for the welfare of God and then for the welfare of yourself. Maybe I've got that wrong. But he goes on in, excuse me, All of and Everything. He talks about Saint Buddha said on page 246 of All and Everything. Saint Buddha said, if this most sacred prana is crystallized in you, and prana is the Buddhist word for all the energies that we're working on. If this most sacred prana is crystallized in you, consciously or unconsciously on the part of your I, your genuine I, you must without fail bring the perfecting of the individual reason of the totality of its most holy atoms to the required gradations. Otherwise, this most holy coating will, changing various exterior coatings, suffer and languish eternally. Suffer and languish eternally in other bodies, meaning coming back. He says here, in other bodies, the totality seems to be required. Otherwise, this most holy coating will change various exterior coatings. And I'm believing that's meaning the other bodies that you will go into in future lives, the other versions of yourself that will come round. And we've got the opportunity to work on ourselves in this life and to get off this wheel that's going round and move on to the next stage. And everything, page 407. The second kind of Hasnas is that Keshjan body, which is coated in his presence with the participation of that same something, and which acquiring, as is proper to such a cosmic rising, the property of Torin-Norino, that is, non-decomposition in any sphere of that planet on which he rose, has to exist by being formed again and again in a certain way, such as he is, until this certain something will have been eliminated from him. So it's like we're getting rid of our Hasnas versions of ourselves. That Keshjan body that's being perfected is for our soul to live in when we die from this life. And we're trying to not get caught up in the reincarnation cycle and come back again. If we've developed our Keshjan body, hopefully we're developed enough to escape the cycle of going round and round on this planet. Hopefully we are perfecting our soul to be, it is like a test. It's like this planet is like an initiation center for us to develop ourselves, to have the chance to move on into the rest of the universe and take part in the holy mechanizing of everything going round and being a part of the system, where at the moment we're living on a planet where we have free will and we're doing what we want willy-nilly and not working for his endlessness, not working for the divine. Unless we want to on this planet, we can connect, but we have to be wanting to do that, desiring, we have to be worthy and be working on ourselves, where most people have no inclination, no need, no want to do this kind of thing. And so they get caught up in the reincarnation cycle and come back to this planet with all that karmic accumulation that they've gathered from this life into another life. So All and Everything, page 673. There are in their common presences, as in the presences of all the free brain beings of our great universe, all the possibilities for coating the higher being bodies, and at the same time, thanks to the crystallization of consequences of the organ Kundabuffer, it is almost impossible for them to carry the higher sacred parts up to the required degree of perfecting. And since a higher part is not subject to decomposition on the planets, and since the planetary body of the beings cannot endlessly exist on planets, and the process of the sacred Rescuanu must inevitably proceed with them at the proper time, therefore their unfortunate higher bodies arising in the terrestrial free-brain beings must inevitably languish forever in all kinds of exterior planetary forms. Raskuanu is our death when we die. That's Gurdjieff's word for death. So if we don't develop in them higher bodies, we come back. We get caught up in the new body, new exterior. But our inner self, our inner soul will be put into that. But if we can develop our higher being bodies, we get off. We go to better things. So All and Everything, page 766. At the end of a certain time, this second part, the Kesjan body, must decompose irrespective of whether the higher being part existing within it had by that time attained to the requisite degree of reason. And in view of the fact that as long as this higher being part does not perfect its reason to the requisite degree, it must always be dependent upon some Kesjenian arising or other. Therefore, immediately after the second sacred Rescuanu, every still unperfected higher being body gets into a state searching for some other similar two-natured arising corresponding to itself, so that this higher being body must instantly enter this other body Kesjam and continue to exist in it for its further perfection, which perfection must sooner or later be inevitably accomplished by every arisen higher being body. And if I'm right in understanding all this, what it's saying is, so we've developed our Kesjan body for our soul to go into, but that Kesjan body only lasts for so long. It doesn't specify whether it's the same for everybody or whether it lasts longer for those that have developed it even stronger than others. But when that Kesjan body starts to decompose, then we need another body for our soul to go into. So we're developing not just a Kesjan body, we're developing another body. And as I've said before, there's many bodies for us. We have many bodies that we need to be working with. Some people call them the astral, etheric, your physical body, your soul body, your shadow, your name body, your magic name that only the divine knows. Coming from the ancient Egyptian way of thinking, they had 7 bodies. Za, Ba, Ka, your ark. The ark is the one that's you go to after your Kesjan body. So we're developing lots of different spiritual bodies inside ourselves. And Gurdjieff does give us exercises for this. There's the I am exercises. And when you're thinking of that, working on yourself with the I am and visualizing your whole body, you're creating that inner astral body or the outer astral body. Whether it's inside or outside, I'm still not too sure, but it's with us. And then there's the color exercises of going through different colors for your body, which can be found in, well, Joseph Assisi does a great book on the exercises. It's a bit expensive, but it's definitely one of the best books ever on all of Gurdjieff's exercises. And obviously then they're all gathered together in one book. So I'd highly recommend his book. Obviously, go back to the Gurdjieff writings themselves. There are many of his exercises you can't always find in his All and Everything. Some of them you have to go through the books that are written by other people where they're discussing all the meetings that he used to have and the exercises he used to give to people. And I know people have said to me, oh, those exercises were for specific people, for certain people, but I've tried various ones of them and they seem to work for me. And then I go on to other ones when maybe I'm not saying I've done it and completed it, but we get into a pattern and I need to change that pattern. So I will try a different exercise. Some days but I always try and do the sitting exercise every morning. The sit-in, the I am into yourself. So the solar plexus is the and then the am all around your body, coming up through your spine and lighting your body up. You know, when you're doing these exercises, try and visualize at the same time creating that Kesjan body and the body, other bodies that we need, them astral bodies to be developing into. Rudolf Steiner, from the anthroposophy side of it, also says the same thing. We need to develop astral bodies for our soul to go into. Steiner says the spirit body is the most important. It's not this physical body. This physical body is just a little lark for us to muck about in for a while, but we need to develop that spiritual body to go on and continue the work. So I was going to do some views from the real world, page 70 of my edition. First of all, he must awake. Having awakened, he will see that as he is, he cannot do. He will have to die voluntarily. When he is dead, he may be born. The being who has just been born must grow and learn. When he is grown and knows, then he will do. So we're coming back to the whole, we die and get reborn, but not necessarily a physical death. It's a death of our old selves to bring forth the new version of yourself that's going to be developed and doing this work. It's like a initiation. You're giving up your old ways because you want to go forward with the new version of the new and improved version of yourself. That's views from the real world. Continuing, page 86. Death must come before rebirth. But what must die? False confidence. Let me say that again. False confidence in one's own knowledge, self-love and egoism. Our egoism must be broken. We must realize that we are very complicated machines. And so this process of breaking is bound to be a long and difficult task. Before real growth becomes possible, our personality must die. So we're getting rid of the ego and the personality by doing this work. And not just getting rid of it, we're becoming aware of it and actually training it to become work with the essence of that was in us, the real I that's doing the conscience. We're getting our personalities to listen to our conscience and want to be part of this work and to do this work. So it'd be better if we could just get rid of them. Bing, and become the new person. So Gurdjieff's asked a question, also on the same page, views from the real world. Does reincarnation of souls exist? And Gurdjieff replies, a soul is a luxury. No one has yet been born with a fully developed soul. Before we can speak of reincarnation, we must know what kind of man we are speaking about, what kind of soul and what kind of reincarnation. A soul may disintegrate immediately after death, or it may do so after a certain time. A soul must be crystallized within the limits of the earth and must remain there, yet not be crystallized for the sun. Well, we don't want to be crystallized for the moon because we don't want to be, well, everybody else is feeding the moon. The moon is developing, but the energies we're creating by doing this work, we're hoping to be working the solar energy. And we're trying to crystallize in ourselves the right energies so that we've got the right bodies there ready for us when we do move on to whatever the next stage is after we die. But also while we're developing them, and if we're developing them while we're still alive on this planet, we can use them and they may make us more of a real, genuine person living real life. So views from the real world, page 217. Reincarnation is a very rare phenomenon. And he's talking here about reincarnation of going on to the next stage, not the reincarnation. We all get caught up in the cycle. Reincarnation is a very rare phenomenon. It is possible either over a very long period of time or in the event of there being a man whose physical body is identical with that of a man who possessed these higher bodies. Moreover, the astral body can reincarnate only if it accidentally meets with such a physical body. But this can happen only unconsciously, but the mental body is able to choose. And then he goes on to say, a few pages later, you will have to live through being identified with all the attractions in the first river. You must die to this river. I've done a little show about the two rivers, but this is continuing on this. Unless you die, you cannot be born again. This does not mean physical death. From that death, there is no necessity to rise again, because if there is a soul and it is immortal, it can get along without the body, the loss of which we call death. Christ and all the others spoke of the death which can take place in life, the death of the tyrant from whom our slavery comes, that death which is a necessary condition of the first and principal liberation of man. And that tyrant's us, it's our personalities holding us back and making us slaves to what's just going along with the world half asleep. When if we wake up, we're trying to subdue that tyrant and letting a real genuine I come through. So continuing. If a man were deprived of his illusions and all that prevents him from seeing reality, His interests, cares, expectations, and hopes, all his strivings would collapse. Everything would become empty, and there would remain an empty being, an empty body, also physiologically alive. This would be the death of I, the death of everything false collected through ignorance or inexperience. All this will remain in him merely as material, but subject to selection. Then a man will be able to choose for himself and not have imposed on him what others like. He will have conscious choice, choice to come back or not. Buddha decided to come back to help us, and the bodhisattvas that we know walk this planet, they are ones that were developed enough to go on to the next stage, but they chose to come back and help humanity. You know, we have to thank them teachers for still coming back to help those that want to learn and move forward and want to develop. You know, I know we've said before that Gurdjieff says we can only do this by ourselves, but we need a helping hand from teachers. But we don't need a teacher to be with all our lives. We have a teacher there with us for a little while, and then we go off and do it by ourselves. Something Gurdjieff used to say to his students, you know, you go now, use this work and live life. So in search of the miraculous. In order to speak of any kind of future life, there must be a certain kind of crystallization, a certain fusion of man's inequalities, a certain independence of external influences. If there is anything in a man able to resist external influences, then this very thing itself may also be able to resist the death of the physical body. And that's from page 31. And he goes on to say on page 91, in actual fact, nothing is immortal. Even God is mortal, of course, in a different way to man. Man has the possibility of existence after death. Because everything lives and dies, everything has a certain lifespan. But at its death, with everything, if it's developed itself in a certain way and has been part of the harmonious continuation of the universe, it will go on to its next stage to continue with that work. It's an ongoing process. But if you don't take part in that process during your life, then you get caught back up in the reincarnation cycle and come back. And we might worry about our family and our friends that aren't doing this kind of work. Well, they're going to keep coming back, but they will at some point in their future lives discover this kind of work and will work and move on. There's hope for everyone. They will do it. It could take them another 1,000 lives. It could take them 5. They might do it in the next life if they're not listening in this life. But, you know, we can't help. We can help them by offering them the work or the ideas, or just, you know, casually passing them in conversation. And if they want to go deeper, then they'll come to you to learn more, and you can direct them in the right direction. But if they're not interested, that's fine. Let them carry on. They'll learn in another life. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. So in Search of the Miraculous, page 93, Ouspensky saying, ordinary man has only the physical body, 48 laws, level of earth. At death, returns to earth. If man has the second body, the astral body, that is composed of material of the planetary body, which has 24 laws, it can survive the death of the physical body. After a certain period of time, it also dies. The third body, the mental, is composed of material of the sun, 12 laws, and can exist after the death of the astral body. The fourth body is composed of material of the starry worlds, all suns, 6 laws, material that does not belong to the solar system. So again, we're coming back to the laws, and every planet's got different laws. All the suns have certain laws, and the closer you get to the divine, the less laws there are on us. Further away you come from the divine, the more laws are put onto you. And I think this also happens in our own teachings. When we're believing in a divine source, when we're working with God, if we're being spiritual, religious people, we have less laws affecting us. So we still get caught up in the law that's going on with this earth, with this planet. And those people that have no interest in all this have all the laws of earth working on them. Which is why sometimes you can take a step back and look at people and see how chaotic their lives are. where when you start doing this kind of work, I'm not saying it becomes perfect, your life, it doesn't, but you become aware of the laws. You seem to not be so involved in them because you suddenly see how things, you don't want to be caught up in the chaos. You're seeing that life is more, can be more harmonious if we work on ourselves. The ancient Egyptians used to worship their gods and honor their gods because they didn't want the gods to bring chaos down on them. Everybody wanted to live a harmonious life. And maybe it's because there's not, people are turning away from the gods, that there's so much chaos in the world today. Though I know many spiritual people, many religious people, they have their hardships as well, but they deal with them in a different way. We let them laws that happen to us are dealt with in a more, can I say, succinct way, something like that. We seem to be able to make them work with us. Sorry, I thought I lost internet then, but I seem to be okay. So it's very important about these laws, and you can find out more about these in Ouspensky's books. He does all these charts of all the different planets and worlds and suns, and what laws affect what planetary bodies, what laws affect man, and so on. So Ouspensky says on page 217 of In Search of the Miraculous, a man may be born, but in order to be born, he must first die, and in order to die, he must first awake. And it's when you start taking this work, which many of you must have been doing because you're watching this and you're studying the Gurdjieff work, and you've probably been watching other people discuss this kind of thing. So you've already taken that first step, ready to change, to become the new reborn version of you. And Ouspensky goes on, it's actually the next page, 218. Being born, the beginning of a new growth of essence, the beginning of the formation of individuality, of the appearance of one indivisible I. To die, to free himself from 1,000 petty attachments, identifications with things, suffering, stupidity, useless eyes. To awaken, to realize one's own nothingness, mechanicalness, helplessness. In feeling his nothingness, a man should see himself as he really is, not for a second, not for a moment, but constantly, never forgetting it. And that does start to happen when you start working in this kind of work. I know I was saying before, you get easily distracted, but the work works on you, works with you. It's a cycle of, it's like the cogs are going round. And so it starts working all together with you and the work. And you start becoming aware of how the work's implemented on your life and how you're changing, the new version of yourself. So I've got an In Search of the Miraculous, page 250. Ouspensky's talking to Gurdjieff, and Ouspensky asks, do we live only this once and then disappear? Or does everything repeat and repeat itself, perhaps an endless number of times? Only we do not know and do not remember it. We must remember Ouspensky was very into recurrence, Nietzsche's idea of, well, not just Nietzsche's, but Nietzsche's another one that propagated recurrence. When we die, if we haven't developed ourselves, we come back and live this life again and again, the same life over. So you don't go into another life, into another family or whatever. You come back and relive the same life with the same family, with the same people. So Gurdjieff replies, this idea of repetition is not the full and absolute truth, but it is the nearest possible approximation to the truth. In this case, truth cannot be expressed in words, but what you say is very near to it. And if you understand why I do not speak of it, you will be still nearer to the truth. What is the use of a man knowing about recurrence if he is not conscious of it and if he himself does not change? If a man does not change, repetition does not exist for him. If you tell him about repetition, it will only increase his sleep. Why should he make any efforts today when there is so much time and so many possibilities ahead, the whole of eternity? Why should he bother today? This is exactly why the system does not say anything about repetition and takes only this one life that we know, the now, this life that we're living in now. The system has neither meaning nor sense without striving for self-change. and work on self-change must begin today, immediately. All laws can be seen in one life. Knowledge about the repetition of lives will add nothing for a man if he does not see how everything repeats itself in one life, that is, in this life, and if he does not strive to change himself in order to escape this repetition. But if he changes something essential in himself, that is, if he attains something, this cannot be lost. And many of you might be aware that I've put audio version of Ouspensky's Strange Life of Ivan Ossikin up on YouTube. I've also done it as a download, an audible only download on Internet Archive, so you can download it for your iPod or whatever it's called and listen to it at your leisure, or go and buy the book. It's a fantastic book to read where Ouspensky does a fictional account of someone who comes back to relive their life. And someone did say to me that he wrote this, The Magician in The Strange Life of Ivan Ossikin is based on Gurdjieff, which I would find quite interesting, and I think maybe it is. But it's a fantastic book anyway, so do go and read it if you haven't already read it. So in Search of the Miraculous, page 255, I can't speak. New birth depends as much upon sex energy as do physical birth and the propagation of species. Hydrogen C12 represents the final product of the transformation of food in the human organism. It is seed or fruit. And he goes on to say, sexual abstinence is useful for the work if there is abstinence in all centres. If there is abstinence in one centre and full liberty of imagination in the others, then there could be nothing worse. And still more, abstinence can be useful if a man knows what to do with the energy which he saves in this way. If he does not know what to do with it, nothing whatever can be gained by abstinence. And we're trying to save that energy to put into them accumulators that I talked about in a previous show. I think I talked about it in the last one a couple of days ago. So we need to make all centres work together. All centres should be doing the same thing. Obviously, one's thinking, one's feeling, one's moving. But if you're trying to put an exercise to them, you need to make it happen on all of these centres to get the full results. Otherwise, it all becomes lopsided, which we all are, lopsided people. So Ouspensky asked Gurdjieff, must we understand that people who are not passing along any of the ways are doomed to turn eternally in one and the same cycle? That they are merely food for the moon? Gurdjieff replies, people who come into touch with the ways select themselves, having a certain hunger. Whoever has this hunger can be brought by accident to the beginning of a way in spite of all unfavourable circumstances. And I do think that you have the hunger, the need, the questioning of what life is about. For anybody, they find a way, a path suddenly opens up to them and they need to take it if they can. If they don't, it might come up and they continue questioning. Another path might open to them in another way, whether it's Buddhism, just use that as an example, or something else is thrown in their way. They come across another teacher of some kind that follows some kind of tradition that helps them develop themselves, or they find a book that comes in into their way to help them develop. People that question, normally the universe hears and answers. So Ouspensky is talking about reincarnation. Every moment of our lives, we may create tendencies that we may not be able to get rid of for 10 lives. This is all talking about karma, law and effect, cause and effect, the laws of cause and effect. What we are doing happens again. And I've said in other shows, I think sometimes when you're doing this work, I think karma comes back quickly on you, maybe even comes back to you on this life. And people that don't do any kind of work, of any kind, spiritual work, it may come back in the next life. Hopefully for us, if we are coming back again in another life, all the work we're putting into this, all the good work will come back for us in good karma in our next life. Right, so Ouspensky, as you probably know, sorry, stuttered then, Gurdjieff and Ouspensky talk about man number 1, number 2, number 3. So a man who thinks too much, man who has a feeling too much, man who's too physical, sporty man, scientist, I don't know, pop singer or whatever, songwriter, and they only work with one center, so they're a little bit out of balance. Then we've got man number 3, which is the man number 4, person beginning to wake up. Hopefully people like us that want to bring the 3 centers together. Then there's man number 5. And Ouspensky says about man number 5, only man number 5 can recur as man number 5. He may not know it, but things will be easier for him. Man number 4 has to make again, and it will be easier and earlier. For some of us, like myself, I was very lucky that I was questioning things as a child. So maybe when I did this life before, I was questioning but didn't quite complete the course. And so when I came back into this life again, the questioning started early for me. I was blessed enough to have that, so that I was questioning things from a young age. Some people don't start questioning things till something traumatic happens in their lives, or when they're older, and they've lived there, had their family life, their children have grown up, the job's boring, maybe start questioning, well, what is life all about? Some people, it doesn't happen until there's a traumatic experience that happens in their life. Happens at different stages in people's lives. And last year, 2020, many people started questioning. And it was part of why I started doing these shows. And I know a lot of other people are doing shows on spiritual development, spiritual science, spiritual aids for yourselves. There's many paths. This is our chance to try and wake up. 2020 shocked a lot of people. Many people went back to sleep, but a good lot of people decided to rethink and revalue their lives, bless them. And hopefully they're going forward in positive ways. So we're going to do Ouspensky again, referring to occurrence. Ouspensky says, something that will give you material for thinking. I always avoid speaking about it for 2 reasons. First, we can only talk about the theory. We have no real facts about it. Second, we do know that, in connection with work, laws referring to recurrence change. It is necessary to understand these things. Even in ordinary life, people are very different in relation to recurrence. Some people may have exactly the same recurrences. Some may have different variations or possibilities, and some may go up and others may go down. Oh, I hope you all go up. But this is all without relation to the work. When one becomes nearer to the possibility of work, it is possible in a certain way, although only theoretically, to study 3 successive recurrences. Suppose the first is when one comes near to the possibility of meeting with some kind of ideas of higher mind. Second, when one comes definitely in contact with C influences, and the third will result from that. From the moment one comes to definite ideas, C influences, the possibility of recurrence diminishes. And the C influences, I'm pretty sure that's the teachers in the mystery schools. The number of chances diminishes because C influence cannot be wasted. It is limited. If we don't work in the right way, we will lose the possibility of recurrence. Next time you must be in a higher school. If you cannot, there will be no other school on this level because you've already passed that. We don't want to lose that opportunity. So I'm pretty sure C influences are the higher schools. I'm trying to remember what A, B, and C schools are. Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, but maybe I'll put it in the comments section below. Or maybe someone else wants to write about it, and let's help each other and interact with each other of what we remember. I do apologize, can't remember the 3 schools, A, B, and C. Kenneth Walker. I love Kenneth Walker's books. I don't know if any of you've managed to get hold of any. He worked with Jung for a while. Was that Maurice Nicole? Oh, I'm mucking this up today, aren't I? I can't remember things properly. Well, he knew Maurice Nicole, so he must have understood the Jung work. Kenneth Walker went to the Ouspensky group meetings in London. He found out Gurdjieff was still alive in France, so he went out to France, to Paris, to sit at the feet of Gurdjieff, as we would say. Well, actually take part in the meetings in Paris, in the flats there during the World Wars. So Kenneth Walker, very good person to read his books. And he says, he, Ouspensky, advised people to go back into their past and try to recall everything that had happened to them, particularly those crossroads at which it might have been possible to have taken a different turn in. He called this reconstructing one's life. His mind was occupied with the idea that had always been of greatest importance to him, eternal recurrence. The idea that life describes a circle in the fourth dimension, the point of death coinciding with the point of birth, existed long before Nietzsche popularized it. He had often said that if a man could recollect and had also will, he would be able to alter the whole course of his life. And we do come up to crossroads, don't we, when we're on this path. Opportunities come to us, and if we take them, then hopefully we're following the right path. And if we ignore them, we might end up going down the wrong path and losing the thread of the path. We might have to take a long winding back to that path to get back on it, which I know is chances we take. And it's down to the individual to decide whether that crossroads that one's come to is that crossroads that's going to get them on to the next stage. So some Maurice Nicoll now. I love his books, Maurice Nicoll's books, and this is from his books on living time. And he says, I think this is page 175 of Living Time. Those people whom Ouspensky calls types of absolute recurrence. And I must just say, I must add this now so I don't forget, I've also put them audio books up on the YouTube and also as the audio download on Internet Archive. I think Living Time is a fantastic book on what is real time. And I think pondering what time is an important part of this work. Because time in the Gurdjieff work, it was the hieropaths that came along, the merciless hieropaths, which is time, that started destroying the universe. So understanding what time is an important part of the work. So please do go and either get Maurice Nicoll's book, Living Time, or listen to the versions I've put up. I know other people have probably recorded it and put it up. Important book. But I shall continue with the quote from it. So I'll start that from the beginning. Those people whom Ouspensky calls types of absolute recurrence. Life is the same each time, but at each repetition it becomes more easy, more certain. Such people have a kind of ironical contempt for people who are restless and are seeking for something. And isn't that true? People do have a restless attitude towards us, an ironical contempt, you know, oh, silly Debbie going off to try and contact God. I'm surprised she hasn't joined a cult. I used to get that quite a lot. People used to be concerned when I used to disappear for a while to do my travels and my meditations or pondering. I take myself out of life sometimes. When I go back and see these people, I remember some of them saying to me, oh, we thought you'd gone and joined a cult. Makes me laugh. Right, so such people have a kind of ironical contempt for people who are restless and are seeking for something. Those who rapidly attain fame and success are also people of absolute recurrence, unconscious memory. And I really think that of people like, let's take Beyonce, for example. She got famous and successful very quickly, but maybe it's because she did this life over and over again. So she was just following the same patterns. Obviously, she doesn't remember living this life before, but that's why she became such a successful singer. You know, and the best of the singers, you know, that's debatable, but that's just as an example. You know, they followed the same path as they've done over and over again, and we want to try and do different paths that instead of repeating our lives, we want to develop and get off the wheel. As Gurdjieff says, break that astrological horoscope that you have, knock down fate, and instead follow a true destiny to who you really are. Continuing Maurice Nicoll. Those who rapidly attain fame and success are also people of absolute recurrence, unconscious memory. Two other types of recurrence, descending and ascending. Descending with each new life, they fall more easily. Ascending, not hindered by success in life, nor by repeated failure. Inward change. Ouspensky gives us two images to assist thought about recurrence. Ouspensky gives us two images to assist thought about recurrence. A spiral and the branching off of lines at every point of the spiral. Some of these branches or lines must be on the same level as the life itself. Some must rise above it, some below it. If the life changes for the worst, it must follow the descending branches and so becomes a descending spiral and vice versa. And we want to ascend. If it follows branches on the same level, it must remain the same quality, although with variations. So you could just go along and do the same thing over and over again, but perhaps with a few variations. You know, a man meets a certain woman in one life, marries her, has children. In the next life, he might not meet her, but he might meet a woman like her. And so does the same things all again because he's met the like. At every moment of the life, these branches enter. Conceive of the life as not being rigidly confined to one point, but as simultaneously following several different directions from which a resultant direction arises. As a result, life either evolves or degenerates. And he goes on to say, the idea of recurrence really belongs to a new conception of the world. It can bring with it an entirely new sense of responsibility towards one's own life, and arising out of this towards the lives of other people. The tasks of life must be completed. Nothing can be avoided, for we will be brought back to the same point again and again and again. So what we're doing in this life, we want to be doing things that help us with the next recurrence if we come back, or the next reincarnation if we go to a new life. We want to build up our ability to perfect our soul. That's what we're aiming to do. And I just wanted to finish with a few more Knott quotes. Knott says, recurrence is a sphere, lines of latitude making circles, an octave of them from the equator, and beings have a longevity corresponding to their latitude of time. Those nearest the pole being the shortest. Lines of longitude are spatial. Longitude is reincarnation in space. Latitude is recurrence in time. The minds you now have are incapable of grasping these ideas. We aim to develop minds to which these ideas will be as easy, relatively, as ideas of 2 dimensions are now. So these are things for us to ponder on. You know, we need to go and think about time and space and our place in it, and what time and space is doing as we live this life and all these other lives, and what is happening to everybody else's lives. Not necessarily too subjective about other people's lives, but from an objective point of view, other people's lives and the world and everybody on it. So go and ponder time and space, people, or space-time, as Thoth the Egyptian says. So Knott says, it may be that when we come to the end of our planetary existence, we shall be asked, what is your state of being now compared to what it was when you entered this spell of existence? We might be compelled to endure another kind of planetary existence deserved by a degree of merit, perhaps one in the animal kingdom. Though that'd be quite nice. I don't mind going being an animal somewhere, as long as I'm not being tortured by humans. So at the end of our life, when we're on our deathbed, we need to be able to think back and think that we've lived a life full of quality. It's not important how many years you live on this planet. What's important is what we put into them years, the quality of our life, and whether we've worked on ourselves. It's not a race to see who can live the longest. It's a race to see who can be the best at living and doing the work. Though that makes it competitive, but it's competitive with ourselves, with our own person. We're trying to develop me. I'm working on me. You're working on you. So please, for your homework, go and study time and space. Till next time, peace and out.